with Boston Charlie. La da 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 dee 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 dee. La da dee 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 dee. La da dee. I must say that I have a personal vice which I have to confess to, and that is riding along in a car. See, when you're by yourself, never do this when you're with other people, never. By yourself, see, you got this radio in the car with the FM, and you ever find yourself singing obscene lyrics with songs that you make up as you sing? Well, I do, and I sing really great in the car, just tremendous. And just the other day, and what's worse, you're often ad-libbing lyrics to songs which have a totally opposite meaning to the ones you're singing. I come up with some great lyrics, and I don't know where my head is when I'm driving along in a car there. And you see, I must confess, I have a background in the whole world of singing. I must confess this to you. This is not my first time that I have sung publicly. Oh, no. In fact, this time of the year, I cannot help but from time to time recall, if I may do so, not with nostalgia, no way, but with some regrets. That's not the same. A moment of very high triumph that I once had. Fantastic triumph. And also, like with most triumphs, there is a touch of the disaster involved. But a true triumph is never a triumph unless it overcomes what appears to be imminent failure. On the other hand, who is to know what is a failure? The fact that you got booted out of your job 6 years ago could very well have been the best thing that happened to you, right? That's what they keep telling you. And, of course, that's one of the great parts of the human head. You know, the human head convinces itself, no matter what happens, that it's all for the best. Oh, yes. In fact, I remember one time attending a curious wake. You ever gone to a wake? Well, this guy was walking down a street in Cincinnati when all of a sudden a stone gargoyle fell off a building, which was 32 stories high, and it hit him right between the ears. I mean, and you can imagine what happened. Well, this was a big gargoyle. This was the kind, like they have on the Cathedral of Notre Dame. Tremendous gargoyle with wings. It had wings and claws and a big beak and a mad looking on its mad face. Oh, it looked mean as hell, And this gargoyle fell right off the building, landed right on this guy, and the ball game was over for him. Now, it's not everybody that gets killed by a flying gargoyle today. His funny thing about this gargoyle, it was aerodynamically so well designed. After all, a gargoyle is a flying creature. That it didn't even actually fall off the building that he was walking next to. The gargoyle had glided for 4 blocks. Caught him right in the middle of a stride, and it was all over him. This damn thing hit him right on the back of the neck, and it weighed 17 tons, and it was gone, Well, there I am. I'm at the wake for this poor guy. We shall call him Stanley, shall we? I wish to preserve the innocence of the guilty that are. You see, they pretended they're innocent. We all pretend we're innocent. Have you noticed? Not one single guy called up before the Watergate committee, the investigating. What is it? The court. I guess it's a court now. Has had anything to do with any of this Watergate stuff. It's fantastic. It must have been the elves. I say the elves do a hell of a lot more than we give them credit for. That's why the early people believed in elves and fairies. Who do you think does all the bad stuff? You don't think it's anybody that gets pulled into court, do you? Are you kidding? He's a poor, sad victim of an evil judicial system. Why, George? Well, so the elves are out there doing it all the time. We ought to start believing in the elves again. And the fairies, because they're really there and they're doing it. Well, anyway, this poor guy was walking down the street. Stanley is just walking like anybody else, when all of a sudden, kapow, he gets bapped right down right there in mid-stride. Now, I might add that more than that, Stanley had just decided to go into a new job. His whole life was opening up. He had decided that he was going to get rid of his wife. He was going to do the whole thing, and bam, that gargoyle hit him. Well, I'm standing in the crowd there, and we're drinking this cheap beer. It's a wake, It's not a funeral. It's a wake. What is it, a wake? It's the only wake I ever went to. And we're standing around drinking cheap beer when this guy comes up to me and he says, I want to tell you, And I said, yeah, when a guy starts out like that, you got to be careful. He said, I want to tell you, I always liked you. Well, now, he always liked me. That's kind of nice to know, isn't it? Knowing the guy that said it, it was not much of a compliment, actually, because he's been known to stand for hours and kiss a lamp pole out there in the dark. He doesn't, he thought he was with somebody else. So he says to me, he said, I always liked you. And I said, yeah, all right, Howie. You always liked me. Now, come on, quit hanging on me. We're at a wake. We got to be dignified. He said, no, I want to talk about Stanley. And I said, yeah, what about Stanley? I want to say this. I was talking the other day to poor Stanley. I was talking the other day to Cliff, and I said, Cliff, that's probably the best thing that could have happened for Stanley. I said, well, yeah, I suppose, getting hit by a gargoyle. After all, it's not every man that has that happen to him, and after all, it makes him stand out. Most people get heart attacks and hardening of the arteries. He was killed by a gargoyle. No, that's not what I mean. You never know what might have happened. He might have got that job, and he might have got fired, and that woman he's going with is a real mean one. I'll tell you, I know her. And I want to say this is probably the best thing that happened. Took him out of his misery. And, he probably would have died of a heart attack, and he wasn't looking good anyway. Well, that's true. He wasn't looking good. Maybe he called that shot. Who knows? Psychologically, he could have drawn that damn gargoyle to him. You never know. Man, they say, creates his own end. They do say this, Not that I buy it, but they say it all the time. So there got to be something to it, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Oh, of course. So he says, you're the best thing in the world for poor old Stanley. It's worked out for the best. What does it make people always feel this? It worked out for the best. Worked out for the best. Yeah. Well, I haven't ever seen anything in my life that worked out for the best. Have you? No. Nothing ever really quite works out. It doesn't even work out for the worst. It just sort of keeps flubbing along, right? What do you say we have a little Christmas music? Bring it on there. You can sing along with it. All right, come on, sing, gang. I want to hear some singing. Let's hear it. There's a lot of you guys are going to get fired over the Christmas holiday. Now's the time to sing. Dick the Halls with Holly. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-dee. 5th season to be jolly. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la. Bring it up there, please. Now let's hear it. La-la-la-la-la-la-la. That was good, wasn't it? La-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. All right, hold it there now. There's a story in this. You notice how well I sang that climbing obligato there? Well, that didn't come without a lot of work. I start to sing mostly, though, during this time of the year, because this was the time of the year that as a singer, I achieved both my greatest fame and also I was, let's put it this way, the victim of a great disaster. You want to hear what it is? Okay. Now, I suppose almost all of us at one time or another have joined a group. I mean, like in school. We're talking about school. Now, there were several groups that I was into outside of, an athletic team or something like that. I mean, a group. Now, for example, we used to have a biology club. I joined the biology club. Now, I joined the biology club on the mistaken hope that Miss Crystal Reeder, who was the biology teacher who ran the biology club, by me showing that I had an unbelievable interest in biology, you sit around and talk about genes and stuff in the biology. That's a great way to spend the Friday afternoon after school, and look at leaves and things like that and cut up worms. And, that's what they did in the biology club. I felt that if I joined the biology club, I would be signifying to Miss Crystal Reeder that I had a more than ordinary walking around interest in biology, that my heart was in the right place, and thereby I would achieve a higher grade. It did not work out that way. I spent weekend after weekend in that damn biology club and wound up with a C+. I could have got a C+ fooling around with a ping pong club. which is what I would have preferred to have been in, or the model airplane club. But I was in that damn biology club. Wasted youth, I'll tell you. Then you think of the things you waste your time on. The biology club. And I noticed in the biology club, almost all the people in the biology club were girls. Now, I can't explain that either. Why do girls have an intense interest in biology? They really do. In fact, you read a lady magazine, and they're far more clinical about sex than any male magazine. They can even come with diagrams. They're fascinated by the mechanics of the human body. Well, also by the body of frogs, gophers, raccoons, all this other stuff that we were messing around with. I got so tired of messing around. We had one whole week where we did nothing but talk about the Anopheles mosquito. I got Anopheles right up to here after that, it wasn't until years later I was in the Army they started to tell me about the Anopheles mosquito again. That little mosquito really gets around. So, nevertheless, there was the biology club. Now, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm just going to confess to you, though, that at one point in my life, I was a freshman in high school. Now, at that point, when you're a freshman in high school, you're not a little kid, and yet you're not entirely out of the egg, right? You're sort of tremulous is the word, You're trembling upon the edge of the vast discovery that adulthood is inevitable, no matter how hard you fight it. Now, some guys fight it all their lives, but it does them no good. That's called the Dorian Gray concept. Now, we don't want to get into that. That could get a lot of people mad. However, nevertheless, there I was. I was in freshman. And I might add that I had graduated from grade school earlier than, other kids, because it was all a matter of semesters. I was, sometimes if you went to school when you were 6, you graduated. Depending on when you went, I happened to go when I was 5 and a half, so I was younger than a lot of the kids that graduated. And there I was in high school, a freshman. Now, I was sitting around there as maybe third or fourth week in high school when they passed back a paper in my homeroom. What activities would you like to be part of? Well, now, activities. Now, that means an organized club of some kind, And I immediately weighed in my mind, an activity means hanging around school after school is over, which was not necessarily a tasteful thought to me. Now, at that point, I'm sitting there thinking about what club, and I realized that you're going to have to write something down. If you write none on it, rotten bunch, fooling. I don't want to mess around with that. Well, I don't know whether Miss Snyder would have liked that either. See, so she was my homeroom teacher. She's always talking about school spirit. So I remember this was in the fall. See, this is the beginning of the freshman year, and I was new in this outfit. So I'm sitting back there, and there was this girl who was in this particular homeroom with me who was Hungarian. Now, I don't know whether you've ever known a Hungarian girl, but let me put it this way. Other girls begin where Hungarian girls stop. She had it all going. Fantastic girl. Her name was Helen Kubelik. Now, I knew a few words of Hungarian. Like, for example, I'd sit there and say, Tasik. And she'd look at me and say, Én tudom, tapolom vagyok. I'd laugh. Well, now, don't ask me how I knew all these things. A man cannot be asked to explain for his totality of experience. And so I'm sitting back there looking at Helene and Helen Kubelik, and she had this sweater. Well, let's put it this way: this sweater was well distributed. It was a very well done sweater, and she had on the outside of the sweater she had a patch. What is it? A patch like when you play football, you get this letter. I got this letter, see. Someday I ought to wear my letter down here to really make you guys mad here. On a big letter with the stars and all that stuff. And she had a patch, though, and it was lute, a lyre. What is it, a lyre? A lyre. See? And it was a lyre, see? And it had underneath it, it was purple and white, see? And it was on this white sweater. So oh, yeah, trying to make cards. I say, hey, that's a great-looking sweater. Ha, ha, ha. She says, shut up. That was her usual answer to me. Well, I discovered that the reason she had this lyre is because she was in the Glee Club. Ah, now it's beginning to come. See, well, I had discovered this early in the game, see. So I wrote down on my activities, the activities I would like to be part of. I wrote down Glee Club. Now, when in grade school, the Glee Club was nothing really official, Glee Club. That, they'd sing at the oral hygiene pageant on the toothbrush week. The Glee Club would sing in safety week, and that kind of stuff. See, but the Glee Club, I never thought much about a Glee Club, so I wrote down Glee Club. I want to warn you, friends, be careful what you put your name on. Yeah, a lot of guys have put their names on things which have cursed them all the rest of their lives. Do you know that I still get mail to this very day from the International School of Home and Correspondence Detecting in Kansas City, Missouri? They are under the mistaken idea that I have missed my trade and calling, and that over all these years I have harbored a secret desire to become an undercover detective. And their ads always say, earn big money in the law enforcement game. The law enforcement game, it says, learn fingerprinting at home. And they want to send me this kit. It says, all I got to do is fill in that form at the bottom, and I will be under no obligation. They assure me of that. Well, they don't spell out what obligation means. You mean 15 guys pounding on your door night and day. Guys following you up and down the street, threatening to hit you on the head unless you pay. That's no obligation, I suppose. It says you will be under no obligation. We will send you this fingerprint kit. Now, how did I happen to get on that list? Well, at the age of, how old are you when you're in the Cub Scouts? Right, 10. Okay, 10. I had this little beanie, this blue beanie. It said Cub Scouts Wolfpack, a little bit. Well, me and Schwartz and Flick one time took a whole pack of postcards, a kind of you buy in the post office, and sent them into any place in the back of the magazines we had, like such great magazines as Popular Mechanics. Love that magazine, Popular Mechanics. Build your own kayak, and they had all these ads in the back. It says just send for a catalog, free catalog. Well, we sent off. I had a whole big package. I had about 100 of these postcards. I sent them off. Well, ever since that time, I've regretted it. Look at that, 10 years old. I've been pursued by that International School of Correspondence Police Work and Detecting in Kansas City, Missouri ever since. Now, I'm probably on several other lists as a result of that. 10, So I signed up for the Glee Club. As a result of that, I still get letters from places that sell guitars by mail. I showed a great interest in music in my time. Well, actually, it was a great interest in Hungarian girls. Now, who's going to question a man's motivation, So, but out of that sprang one of the curious episodes in my career, if it can be called a career. There I was. I was a freshman in high school. 3 days after I signed that form, I came into the homeroom just like you do every morning, 8:15, and Miss Snyder every morning would read announcements. The announcement you get in the homeroom? For example, announcement would read like this. The Safety Club will meet in room 208. Mr. Harris says not to be late today. It will meet immediately following the 8th period. Can you imagine somebody joining the Safety Club? We had a thing called the Safety Club. I guess you sat around in the Safety Club and talked about making right-hand turns. Always turn your turn signals on that. I don't know, racy little clubs like that. I was also drafted in the High Y. You ever hear of the High Y? Sure, I was in the High Y. But that was a later, more spectacular episode. But this one here had its moments of poignancy. So Miss Snyder's reading the announcements that morning. She says, and the following people will report to the auditorium for the first Glee Club practice. Ada Smithson, and she's reading these names, Helen Kublik, Gene Shepard. I thought there was more to getting into one of these things, just writing down. See, so, okay, she's sitting there next to me, and I said, hey, I'm going to Glee Club. She said, shut up. So, well, it was a start anyway, what the hell. So that night at 3:30, immediately following the 8th hour, I am now in the auditorium with a whole bunch of, I think it's about 200 kids sitting in this outfit there, see. And they're all sitting there waiting for Miss Altman, Miss Pearl Altman. Miss Pearl Altman was our Glee Club teacher. She was the music teacher. Now, music teachers and art teachers tend to have pretty much the same characteristics as human beings. They tend to wear burlap skirts, which they make themselves. They tend to spend their vacations in colorful fishing villages in Mexico, and they come back and make their own jewelry based on what they've seen there. And they, you know that type of lady, okay? And so Miss Altman was that type. Well, for the first time, I found myself subject to the jibes and the unfair barbs of my fellow walking around male. There's something about joining the Glee Club that often causes guys around you to take it lightly. Schwartz, for example, said, "Oh, the Glee Club, huh? La-di-da." What do you mean, a Glee Club? It was perfectly honest. I could not tell him that I had my eyes on Helen Kubelik, because I figured I was the only one that had discovered her. You know, it was like discovering a whole new gold field that nobody even knows about, you know, in Staten Island. I mean, you don't see old prospectors walking around there. And Helen Kubelik, I could see neath that rough exterior there beat a heart of pure passion. Oh, yeah, she had it all going, man. So, to this day, she probably, so, I just think I could, had I really gotten involved with her, I could have spent a whole lifetime among kulbasi and stuffed cabbage and all that stuff, seeing paprika. So, I reported for the Glee Club the first day. I remember it vividly. Miss Altman was up on the stage. We're all sitting down in the seats down there. And there was a whole crowd of kids who were all old veterans already in the Glee Club. You know, they're all hitting each other and saying things like, "Hey, how are you, Cliff? Glad to see you back." You know, and they all had these little liars on them. They were wearing these sweaters, and they were official. So Miss Altman says, "How many here today are new to the Glee Club?" So first I put up my hand. She said, "All of you who have never been here before, please sit over on the other side so that I can separate you from the regular members." So I looked over at Helen. I said, "Well, here I go, baby." She said, "Shut up." So I got up and walked over and sat down with a bunch of other people, a couple of girls, and we're all sitting there. Little did I realize the humiliation that was about to be visited upon me. Miss Altman now walks over to the other side of the stage and sits down at a piano. She says, "All right, now, I will call the names from the list here, and each one of you, as you're called, please come up on the stage and just follow my instructions." So I'm sitting back there, and the first guy she called was a guy named Bates. I remember Bates, a tall, skinny guy with yellow hair, and they had these thick glasses. And so she called Howard Bates up on the stage, and she said, "All right, Howard, now, when I play a note on the piano, I want you to reproduce it with your voice. So I will give you an example. I will go dung, 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 and then I want you to go ooh, 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 just the way I have done. Dung, 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 ooh, ooh, ooh. And then when I hit another note, like gung, 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 you go ooh, ooh, ooh. Now, are you ready?" So Howard stood up there, you know, and she says, "All right, here we go. Gung, gung, gung." Howard goes, She said, "Thank you very much. Now, Howard, you sit down, and maybe next year we'll need a person with the type of voice you have," which is a very interesting voice. Very interesting. However, the sort of music we are doing here is very simple, and much too simple for the complex voice that you have. Well, poor old Howard came back, sat down, rejected. I mean, you know, it was obvious he was rejected. Howard's hair was even pink, you know, with the embarrassment. He sat down. And he was muttering. I hear him swearing, you know. I guess teachers don't know what goes on down in the class when guys are talking to themselves and talking to people around them. And a lot of obscenities come out. So Howard's, so, you know, they've called 3 or 4 people up there. And finally, it's my turn. I say, "Well, I see what you got to do up there, see." So I realized right away that singing is acting. Guys up there were trying to sing. You have to act like you're singing. That's enough, you know. Make your arms go out. That's important, you know, and look very serious. Most of these guys just stood there with their stomach hanging out, you know, they go like that. See? So I had seen plenty of plenty of movies where guys like Mario Lanza were singing, you know. So I was no singer. So I got up there, and I also realized that it's important that these guys were just making notes. See, so I went up there with my head going, because I wanted to hang around Helen Kubelik. That's what I wanted, man. See, so I figured there's nothing to the singing bit. So I got up on the stage there, and she said, all right, now, she says, you've seen the others. Now it's your turn. I will hit a note. So she went, dong, and I go, oh. And she stopped. Great Scots. I was singing. Oh. So she said, oh, it's very interesting. Let's try this one now. Dong, dong, dong. I went, whoa. The same note that I'd made before, see? But I waved my arms. She's very interesting, she says. Very good. She says, now you will sit over on the edge of the aisle there. I made it. Me and 3 other guys were picked for the Glee Club. Now, I sang bass. I was put in the bass section. Helen Kubelik, by the way, was a soprano, which meant that she was down in the front all the way over to the left. I was in the back all the way to the right. I stood right back up there, you know, way up back by the sets all the time, see? So the first day we are going to have a rehearsal. I'm standing up in the back now in my new group. You know, I felt like, you know, I'm in. It's always great to be in, see? So I'm standing up there in the back. She says, all right, now, basses. Now, all of you basses now. From that minute on, we just became a group called Basses. That's all. There was no longer any, you know, people like Stanley and Howie and all. I was a bass, so basses. She says, now, I want you to sing on the beat. As I play the piano, I want you to go hum, 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 hum. So I said, okay. Sure enough, it was a great feeling. You hear all these guys around, And so by 5:30 that afternoon, we are briskly working on our first number. Now, the number, all Glee Clubs sing this number. I'm sure that if you were in a Glee Club, you know it. Can you bake a cherry pie, darling Billy? I can bake a cherry pie, and the apple of my eye. Oh, ho, ho, lo-da-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee. Not bad. I mean, you know, what the hell. So at that point, you have to go things like, the Glee Club, though, the bass section, doesn't sing any of that. All they do is go, zum, 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 zum. And we were already working the next week on our second number, which is, you know the tune. Everybody sings this one. There's a little church in the valley, a little brown church, zum, zum. That's my part, zum, zum. All right. But let's put it this way. I was spending a lot more hours with Helen Kubelik. I agreed that it was ridiculous. And she had stopped saying shut up to me, and now she had lapsed into a kind of sullen silence, which I figured was mistakenly, as man often misreads woman. I had taken this as progress. She has ceased to say shut up, and now she was silent. Oh, but that's not the end of the story, friends. I not only sang bass in that rotten Glee Club, I became a fantastic singer. That's true. For about 10 days. It's funny what your head does. You know, I think you can actually forget what you were doing that was right. I mean, seriously, like a guy forgets how to throw a slider. And the next thing you know, he's working at Mutual Life Insurance. That's a fact. I knew a guy who forgot how to score hook shots. Yeah, he was a professional basketball player, and one day he says, I come there, and I wasn't hitting. I couldn't remember how my arm went. And the next thing you know, he's watching films of himself. You're listening to a guy who cut a swat in that Glee Club for 10 days until all of a sudden I discovered I was singing. I made the quick transition from nightingale to frog. Roughly 12 seconds. You know, Arnold Palmer forgot how to sing Putz. He's been watching films of himself for years, trying to figure what the hell he was doing when he was singing them Putz. He still can't figure it out. So it's all in the mind. You don't want this at the Christmas time, do you? Maybe you do. Maybe it'll be a little antidote to all the sweetness and light around. My God, you can find a lot of ways to strike out if you try.
By recording from New York, you've been listening to Inside Gene Shepherd. Our next Shepherd program can be heard Thursday evening at 6:30. Right now, it's 2 minutes after 7 o'clock. Our temperature is 41 degrees. In tonight's news...